Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and absolutely dismantle the myth that to be a great leader, you've got to be this loud, disruptive visionary. We live in a culture that basically tells us a true leader has to be a furious genius, prowling the room, demanding everyone bend to their singular, uncompromising will. But today, we're going to look at a quiet man from a dairy farm in northern Italy who proved that the absolute best way to lead is by doing the exact opposite. We're talking about the legendary Carlo Ancelotti. Here's our roadmap for today. First up, the modern leadership myth. Then, bending to the talent. 3, the weapon of calm. 4, leading without dominating. And finally, we'll wrap up with the Don Carlo playbook.
Chapter 1. The Modern Leadership Myth. Or, why we completely fetishize the furious genius.
We've built this whole vocabulary around the restless disruptor, right? We idolize the loud, uncompromising boss. But take a look at the number 5. That represents Carlo Ancelotti's record-breaking 5 Champions League titles as a manager. And honestly, even more staggering, he is literally the only manager in history to win the domestic league in all 5 of Europe's major countries: Italy, England, France, Germany, and Spain. A guy who keeps his voice down, who keeps his system totally flexible, has quietly outwon them all. And you absolutely do not achieve that kind of unprecedented cross-cultural dominance just by getting lucky.
This really gets to the core difference between Ancelotti and his peers. While the visionary imposes their will, forces players into a rigid template, and frankly burns out their teams with high panic, Ancelotti acts as the ultimate adaptor. He looks at the people right in front of him, and he bends the plan to fit them. It sounds super simple, right? Well, as we're going to see, it is actually the hardest thing to do in leadership.
So, where did he learn this? As a player, Ancelotti experienced 2 wildly different managers. Under Nil's lead home at Roma, he felt the profound power of warmth, of trust, of basically being treated as an intelligent adult. But then, at AC Milan, he played under Arrigo Sacchi, an absolute fanatic who demanded total submission to a ruthless, exhausting system. Now, most leaders just pick one extreme. But Ancelotti brilliantly absorbed both truths. He took Sacchi's structural brilliance, dumped the exhausting fanaticism, and merged it with Liedholm's humane trust to create something totally new.
Chapter 2. Bending to the talent, also known as the Pirlo pivot.
Let's look at his time managing AC Milan back in the early 2000s, because he faced a universal workplace dilemma here. Actually, think about your own team for a second. What do you do when your absolute most talented employee is blocked and just doesn't fit your established structure? At Milan, Ancelotti had this supremely gifted attacking midfielder named Andrea Pirlo. Problem was, the creative positions ahead of Pirlo were already packed with world-class talent. Pirlo was way too good to leave on the bench, but he just didn't fit the current system.
It's how Ancelotti responded that is so crucial. I mean, most managers would just sell the player, bench them, or force them to adapt to a role they absolutely hate. Instead, Ancelotti looked at Pirlo's actual gifts, his insane vision, his passing range, and moved him backward into a regista, or deep-lying playmaker role. He completely redesigned the entire team's shape into his famous Christmas tree, a 4-3-2-1 formation built specifically to protect the playmaker. He did all of that just to maximize this one employee's unique gifts.
And honestly, that is the thesis of Ancelotti's entire career. Change the system to fit the talent, not the talent to fit the system. Doing the really hard cognitive work of reshaping your strategy to fit the actual humans you have in the room is always more effective than rigidly demanding compliance to some template. Think about that for a second. If your first instinct is to fix the person, you're probably going to fail. But if your first instinct is to fix the fit, you open up just extraordinary potential.
Chapter 3. The Weapon of Calm. Radical composure under pressure.
When absolute disaster strikes on the touchline, amidst total stadium hysteria, Ancelotti famously just raises one eyebrow. But that famous calm, it's not passivity. It is a deliberate physiological intervention. To understand it, check out this timeline. Back in 2005 in Istanbul, Milan suffered one of the most traumatic collapses in football history, giving up a 3-goal lead in the Champions League final. A disaster like that usually fractures a team forever. But Ancelotti, he absorbed the blame, flat out refused to panic, and kept the group psychologically intact. Because he preserved their relationships and their identity, they were able to march right back to the final 2 years later in Athens and actually get their redemption against that exact same opponent.
So why does this calm work so well?
Well, as we saw during Real Madrid's frankly impossible, miraculous late comebacks in 2022 and 2024, a leader's emotional state is incredibly contagious.
Under acute stress, our vision tunnels, and our decision-making degrades big time. By maintaining radical calm, Ancelotti directly stops his team's nervous system from shutting down. He manufactures the exact psychological safety they need to take audacious, brave risks in the 89th minute of a losing game, right when everyone else is totally panicking.
And this extends off the pitch too, through something we call the buffer. Ancelotti actively serves as an umbrella. He quietly metabolizes all that intense, crushing anxiety from billionaire owners and furious fans so that his employees only ever experience a safe, highly focused environment. A leader who passes pressure downward just multiplies anxiety. Ancelotti absorbs it, so his team can just go out and perform.
Chapter 4: Leading Without Dominating. Managing Massive Egos. When you're managing the most expensive, volatile egos on earth, like he did at Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid, a fascinating contrast emerges. Look at the insecure bosses on the top row here. They see massive talent, like a Zlatan Ibrahimovic, as a direct threat to their own authority. They feel this need to win a public status contest just to feel safe, which, surprise, surprise, always sparks conflict. Secure leaders like Ancelotti? They don't need to dominate. They build mutual respect, remove friction, and unleash that talent as a pure asset.
Here's the really crucial takeaway. Your authority does not require the submission of your most talented people. A genuinely secure leader gets that elite, highly motivated performers don't need to be pushed around or put in their place. They just need the obstacles cleared out of their way so their talent can burn brightly. Ancelotti made his stars feel powerful precisely because he genuinely didn't feel diminished by their power. A huge chunk of that deep security comes from how he handles failure. Check out this 3-step survival mechanism. Ancelotti was brutally and frankly unfairly sacked at Chelsea right after winning the double. Later on, he faced similarly harsh exits at Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. But he survived with his psyche totally intact by detaching his self-worth from institutional whims. He knew he couldn't control the board, but he could absolutely control his craft, his character, and his relationships. So he arrived at his next jobs completely undefended and ready to build trust all over again.
Chapter 5: The Don Carlo Playbook. Let's get into the quiet leadership toolkit.
All right, let's distill this legendary 30-year career into a toolkit you can literally use tomorrow. Here's the system. 1. Earn authority through your competence. Don't demand it through fear. 2. Treat your people as individuals. Fairness means giving people what they specifically need to succeed, not treating everyone exactly the same. 3. Always criticize in private but praise and protect in public. 4. Act as a buffer against institutional anxiety. And finally, 5. Grant trust to spark true commitment rather than just forcing compliance. You can't fake these. You have to genuinely view leadership as the slow, sincere accumulation of trust.
Now, we have to be completely honest about the limits here. Every method has a boundary, right? His brief failure at Bayern Munich proves that this hands-off, trust-based style will absolutely struggle with a group that actively wants rigid direction and high-intensity demands. If your team reads freedom as a vacuum instead of as respect, the method is going to strain. The great adaptor's lesson here is that even his own style isn't universal. It depends entirely on the people in the room.
Which brings us right back to the bedrock of his entire legacy. Adopt the system to the people, not the people to the system. This single sentence is exactly why a man in his 60s could walk into Real Madrid or the Brazilian national team and instantly connect. It is a brilliant reminder that human beings are the whole point, and the method is only ever just a tool.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take back to your own teams today. Look at the people you manage. Are you doing the hard cognitive work of clearing the path for their unique talents? Or are you just demanding they fit your mold so your life is easier? The eyebrow is available to all of us, and so is everything underneath it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.